done on monitoring frog populations that enabled us to see this dramatic decline. In 1994, this is the red circles. If we have a look at the red circles, this is what the population of Archie's frog looked like. And you can see from his data that we started to get a little bit of a decline here, but in 1994 and 1995, something drastic happened, and we had this amazing decline that occurred right up until 2001. And what's happened since then, we had an 88% decline then, and this is what we end up now. And when we look at that decline, we see that it was a decline that started in the south and slowly slipped through to the north. And we feel that this is probably indicative that a disease went through the whole of the Coromandel Peninsula, wiping the frogs out in its path. At the moment, the frogs are just holding on to their own at very low densities. So they haven't recovered, and this decline was noted in 2001. They haven't recovered very much at all, and they're just hanging on at very low densities. We find that the population we've been monitoring in the Farrier population, which is of course less than 10% of the total population that we had in the Coromandel, there is no decline at the moment, even though we've discovered the chytrid fungus. So we've discovered the chytrid fungus in dead frogs in the Coromandel, and we've also picked it up in frogs in the Farrier population as well. But we first found it in the Farrier in 2006, and we haven't found any decline at the moment in the Farrier. So we're hoping that that population is going to be stable. So what about the mining issue? And that's why I really wanted to be involved with this webinar today, is to try and tell you what the New Zealand government is proposing to do. And one of the things that happened, obviously New Zealand being fairly rich geologically as well, is that we have a lot of good minerals under the surface. We had a Crown Minerals Act that was put about in 1991, and it did allow the Minister of Conservation to permit mining access to conservation land if that is in keeping with the Conservation Act. And what happened in 1997 is that the national government at the time realized that there were some really good parts of the conservation land that was of incredibly high value. They recognized it. It was almost Gondwanan-like, that it had these ancient trees, this ancient fauna. It was practically pristine and undisturbed, and because that had such high conservation value, they listed all these high conservation lands in a schedule called Schedule 4. And this Schedule 4 was then appended to the Crown Minerals Act in 1997, and what it said is that yes, we're going to carry on with the Crown Minerals Act. The Minister of Conservation is allowed to permit mining to conservation land except for that listed on Schedule 4. Schedule 4 land is a no-go area. Nobody can touch it for anything. It is special land. It's recognized for its extremely high conservation value, and nothing can go on there at all, apart from some very low impact prospecting. And that's what Schedule 4 was all about. So Schedule 4 is the ultimate of protection. It protects the best of the best conservation land that we have in New Zealand, and that's what's listed on Schedule 4. And that was the national government in 1997. They went out of power, and then the Labour government came in, and the Labour government tried to think of some other land that should be added to Schedule 4, and they were working on that when they got voted out, and the national government came in again. And now in 2010, in March this year, the national New Zealand government announced a proposal to remove 7,000 hectares of protected land from Schedule 4. And this had huge public outcry. You can see in this picture up the top right, this is showing a march that happened on the 1st of May in Auckland, and that was 50,000 people. Now you can imagine, in a country that only has 4 million people, most of which live in Auckland, you can see that to get 50,000 people motivated enough to march, this is a really important issue for the New Zealand people. And it just shows the New Zealand people's passion for their conservation areas and the animals and plants that live within those areas. So Greenpeace, of course, they were very active, and Lucy Lawless, who many of you will know as Princess Xena, the Princess Warrior from the TV show, she's a New Zealander, and she is a spokesperson for Greenpeace, and she's active. She's actually right there in the middle there. That's Lucy Lawless just there with the orange jacket on. And Greenpeace's thing is really saying, hey, wake up New Zealand, you've missed out here. The whole way forward is to be riding this green wave, to be saying how wonderful and clean and green our image is, rather than being ticked off as one of those terrible nations that just destroys its forests and just to get some short-term benefit from the minerals that lie underneath that. And our former Prime Minister, she was a Labour Prime Minister, and this is at the time when we were doing a lot of work towards the New Zealand biodiversity strategy. And it's sort of quite ironic that this year is the International Year of Biodiversity, and our government is now considering destroying some of this high conservation land to open it up for mining. But the Right Honourable Helen Clark stated that the strategy there was to turn the tide, to stop the decline of our biodiversity, and to maintain and restore a full range of our remaining natural habitats and ecosystems. So she recognized the importance of looking after those extremely high value conservation lands on Schedule 4. So a poll actually came out this morning in New Zealand, and it was a poll conducted on over 2,000 people, just general public of the New Zealand people, and only 29% of New Zealanders actually supported mining on Schedule 4 land. And what's even more worrying is that over 59% believe that the government had already made their mind up. So while they're calling for submissions, a lot of people feel that the government is already going to go ahead, and irrespective of what the submissions say, they're going to take this land off Schedule 4. And I've been telling lots of colleagues here that if they do that, then I'm going to be one of the first people to be chained to those bulldozers to stop the mining on the Coromandel. And yes, it probably is all about the Coromandel, because when we look at it from an economics viewpoint, and this poll that was conducted this morning put together the economic figures. The poll was conducted by Business Council for Sustainable Development, and what they worked out is that the potential economic benefit of this mining that the government is suggesting is in between 19 and 20 billion New Zealand dollars. But unfortunately, nearly all of that, which is about 18 billion New Zealand dollars, is tied up with mining in the Coromandel and the Great Barrier Island. So the worrying thing is that although they're suggesting taking off lots of this land all over the country off Schedule 4, they're really only interested in the Coromandel and Great Barrier Island, because that's where most of the money is going to get. And all the other places are just smoke screens that they can then later on say, oh, well, we'll give you all this other land, we won't take that off Schedule 4, but we're going to take the land off Schedule 4 off the Coromandel and the Great Barrier Island, which of course are the really important areas for Hotchtails frogs and Archie's frogs. So I've been on to Forest and Bird, and Forest and Bird are the organisation that try to keep everything honest about the environment here in New Zealand, and I've been on there on a blog. And one of the things that I wanted to point out here is that at the latest World Congress of Herpetology, which was held in Brazil in the Year of the Frog in 2008, when we presented what we're doing for our frogs in New Zealand with our recovery planning, our translocations, our rat control, our nature conservation, and all those sorts of things, our conservation management here in New Zealand for frogs is a world leader. We are being congratulated for how well we are protecting after our frogs. And it seems ridiculous that after being congratulated like that, that we then are being embarrassed by the New Zealand government that seems to be wanting to rip up the type locality of 2 of our endangered species.